in federal money will be distributed over the decade as a result of the numbers generated from the 2020 census. Let me say that again, $7 trillion. I don't even know how to write that number. After the 2010 census, Florida was the only state to gain 2 U.S. House seats and stands to make additional gains after the 2020 count. At least we hope so. Despite the high stakes, the Florida legislature allowed the measure to establish a statewide complete count committee, to die in the last session. Although the governor did announce a complete count on Monday. Florida was one of only 5 states not establishing a committee. I'm so tired of us being at the bottom of every list. This year's census for the first time will be enumerated online, which may pose unique problems for user error to anonymity, concerns, and fears regarding data security. So today, we have a chance to learn the facts and how we can help to assure that a complete count is accomplished. This is a very important goal of the League of Women Voters of Florida and the League of Women Voters Orange County. The stakes could not be higher and the obstacles clearer. Between the census and the November elections, 2020 is a year that is bookended by formidable challenges and opportunities. So, we have a guide here to educate ourselves on the issues and facts that will be our moderator, Nancy Alvarez. She's a reporter for both WFTV and WUCF. For 20 years, she has played a role in covering every major story in the region, including major storms, political events, and the tragedy at the Pulse nightclub in June of 2016. Nancy began her career as a reporter covering the space program in Brevard County, my hometown. Actually, I grew up there, I didn't live before that. Providing the live coverage of countless space shuttle launches and landings. Nancy was also on the front line for the infamous 2004 hurricane season, where 3 hurricanes hit Central Florida in less than 2 months. More recently, Nancy was one of the first reporters on the ground in Puerto Rico after the Hurricane Maria devastated the island. She has used her reporting to advocate for issues including domestic violence and the challenges facing special needs kids in schools. And I'm sure we all have realized that we have WUCF here today filming. We are grateful for them and for Nancy Alvarez, our moderator. So Nancy, please join me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is a first for me, and I'm so excited to be here. And WUCF is actually here because I host a program on WUCF on Friday nights at 8:30. That's my little plug for News Night. That's our show. And we're going to do an entire segment on this event and on the census because it's so important. And I was asked to just give you a few words on the census, right, and why I think it's important. And I can't talk to you about that without talking about my personal experience on what it means to be counted. So I was one of the first reporters on the ground in Puerto Rico right after Hurricane Maria. And I went to the island countless times after the storm over the course of the last 2 years. And I want you to know that everywhere I went on that island, from one end to another, big cities, small towns, I had someone say to me, if this doesn't work, if it doesn't get better here, I'm taking my kids and we're going to fill in the blank. Well, I have a sister in Kissimmee. Well, my cousin is in Lake Nona. I had a pastor in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere say, well, my brothers, they're in Castleberry. Castleberry? What do you know about Castleberry in the middle of Puerto Rico? But they are connected. This island is so closely connected to us here in Central Florida. And this is Plan B. It's here. It's us. And it is so ironic that we're having this discussion on the census today as the ground is literally still shaking in Puerto Rico with these aftershocks from these earthquakes that they've just had in the last couple of days. I promise you, there are families across that island right now having some very difficult conversations. Schools are closed. They're not going to reopen until these structures are inspected and they're sure that they're secure for these kids. I promise you, there are moms and dads sitting around a kitchen table right now saying, should we stay or do we go? with that cousin in Kissimmee, or that sister in Orlando, or the brother in Castleberry, or the cousin in Lake Nona. And if they decide to come, they need to be counted, because they are coming here to contribute to our economy, to our culture, in very positive ways. These conversations are absolutely no different than the conversation my parents had over their kitchen table in Cuba in the early 60s, right after Fidel Castro. And it was one of the most difficult conversations they've ever had. Do we leave all of this behind? Our family, everything we've ever known, our language, our culture, and do we move to the United States where we know no one, where we don't speak the language, where we don't have jobs? And they made the jump. And they decided to move. And they moved to South Florida. And I don't know how much you all know about the history of Florida, but the influence and the impact of the Cuban community and culture in South Florida remains to this day. And I'm so proud to have been a part of it. I was born and raised there. And I saw it. I saw it happening. I was born by the time it was already established, but it's flourishing and it's powerful and it's recognized and it's respected. There isn't a single politician who's ever run for office that hasn't stopped by Versailles and had a Cuban coffee, right? And so I feel like I'm watching it happen all over again here. But it's not just Puerto Ricans, it's Venezuelans, it's Cubans. Our demographic is changing. We're having a population shift. So I appreciate you all so much gathering in this room to have this conversation. Because when you're doing that, you're saying to these Puerto Ricans and these Venezuelans and these Cubans and all these people that are coming from all these different places, we see you, we respect you, and we care enough about you to make sure that you're counted. So thank you for being here and being a part of this conversation. I am so excited to introduce our panelists. We're going to have a great discussion. Let me introduce each of them to you as they walk up to the stage. These are really impressive bios, by the way, so I'm gonna read them all. Our first panelist I'd like to welcome is Ms. Channa Lloyd. Channa is the Central Florida Partnership Specialist for the Census. She previously served as a Partnership Specialist for South Florida in the 2010 Census. She's working very hard with counties, cities, municipalities, and community organizations to create complete count committees and public initiatives that promote awareness of the census. And these are designed to educate constituents through workshops, seminars, press events, you name it, it goes on. She's also very busy as the managing partner of a law firm. So, a lot on your plate. Thank you so much for being here. Up next, Jackie Galone. Jackie Galone is the Southeast Regional Director for the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund, or NALEO. Her region includes Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Before moving to Florida, she worked for Fortune 500 companies on Wall Street. Oh, by the way, she was also the youngest deputy mayor in the history of the city of Palm Bay, and was the first minority elected to the Brevard County Commission and served as chairman of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County. So thank you so much for being here and for giving us your time. And last but most definitely not least, Lavon Williams, Orange County Community Action Division Manager. She serves as the manager for the Orange County Community Action Division. Community Action provides anti-poverty programs to help individuals and families become economically secure and achieve self-sufficiency. She brings a background in public administration, urban planning, economic development, neighborhood outreach, and community building. She's been with Orange County for over 20 years and has worked closely with the community leaders and volunteers. Thank you so much for being here and for your support. All right, so we will begin, and remember that we will open the floor up to questions. So as we go, please be sure if you're a member to raise your hand, and we'll get to that. We'll get to your questions. We want to include as many of you as we can. If you're not a member, you can be, and we certainly want you to sign up today, and then obviously you can be included in the conversation and the questions. So we want to begin with actually some breaking news on the census. I'm not just saying that because I'm a news reporter, but I'm actually jumping ahead here in our list of questions because Florida was only one of 5 states not establishing a committee for the census, but that actually changed this week, yesterday. So that's new. Jackie, do you want to talk about that and the implications of that?
Yes, good morning. Can you folks hear me? No. Okay. Can you folks hear me in the back? Okay, good morning. Thank you to the League for inviting us and being part of this wonderful panel. There's a lot at stake. I am glad that we started discussing immediately what took place in regards to putting a complete count committee for the state of Florida. And I'm a very positive individual, but unfortunately, I think it's very clear that it's too little too late. And the reason why I'm saying too little too late is because I personally immediately spoke to the governor's office a year ago, explaining to the governor's office how important it is to have a complete count committee. It is also important to be able to share a little bit of history, and I shared with the governor's office that 10 years ago, at that time, 10 years ago, which was a year ago, Governor Charlie Crist allocated millions and millions of dollars for the census, and dollars that were split among 67 counties throughout the state of Florida. So pardon me if I'm not impressed that a complete count committee has been put when there's only about, 8 to 9 weeks that we're ready to start counting, the middle of March. And so on top of that, I was disappointed. At first I was very excited, but then I learned that there were no dollars allocated. So as you can imagine, that was very disappointing. And but that's okay. We're going to do it anyway. Our community is going to be very knowledgeable. We have these wonderful ladies here who are part of making it happen, and that's kind of what we feel. And we put a press release, as a matter of fact, yesterday regarding.
So let's talk more about that work and how it's going to look and what we have ahead of us. And just really, it's going to be like this. It's going to be here. Channa, we can start with you. Let's start with who is counted. From children to prisoners to people who are undocumented, all are included. Immigration status did stir up some controversy as we geared up for the census. So let's talk about who is counted and where that immigration issue stands right now.
Well, regarding the immigration issue, the citizenship question is not on the census form. That's been established. And everyone is counted, regardless of status. If you are here in the United States, we count you within our census. And we've been doing this way since 1790. We count everyone that's here, every age group. If you are born as of April 1st, midnight, and at 12:01 a.m., we want to include you in the census. Because if you think about it, the census is accounting for a decade's worth of dollars. So when you say $7 trillion, this is across a decade. So we have to be able to forecast for everyone and their needs. We forecast for needs from everything from age group. Children need schools, hospitals, a certain amount of elementaries when we know what age bracket they're in. Older populations have different needs, and that's how they account for that. So when you talk about building of new hospitals, roads and highways, schools, those are forecasted by making sure that everyone is counted so we know who and where everyone is so we can forecast those dollars out.
Lavon, when you're out there in the community and you're one-on-one with people, are people still skeptical?
Well, I think there are two schools of thought. There are those who are very excited that this is an opportunity for them to finally count and to finally make sure that the message is out and that those who are important to this process, which is everyone, get involved. But then, yes, there are those out there who are still a little concerned about, okay, is this going to be used against me in some way or form or fashion? But that is why we have our local complete count committees, and that's why we have organizations like yours and others throughout the community, because our goal is to really help lay aside those fears. The census, in fact, on your table, you all have this brochure. The census is safe, secure, and short. That's the message that we're trying to get out to everyone. We want to make sure that whether your household only includes just you, or if you have 12 extended family members living in your household, that every household is counted. Every person in your household is counted. But to answer the question, yeah, there are some people who are still skeptical, but we're working really hard to make sure that they can be confident in participating in the census. And one of the ways that we're doing that is that we're enlisting trusted voices, people in the community who Joe and Joanne trust. You know, whether it's the pastor or Mrs. Smith on the corner, or Mr. Jacobs who goes around and helps cut everybody's lawn. We're soliciting people and organizations who are trusted in our community to take the message out to those individuals that still may be skeptical and help them feel a little more comfortable about the process.
And that is a perfect segue into the online census, because there are people that may be skeptical about that. There are 3 ways to respond to the census this time around. Phone, mail. Does everybody remember mail? It's where you put a letter in an envelope and then there's a stamp. Okay, we're good, right? On mail? Okay. So now we have this online method. So let's dive into that and how exactly that's going to work. Channa, you want to take that one?
Sure. So you're going to receive 4 mailers starting March 12th. Every week there's going to be a separate mailer. It's going to have the website address where you're going to go. It's also going to have, you're going to go directly to that URL. So that way you know you're going to the correct URL. Everything is geocoded by address. We're not asking for information on the person. We're asking for information on the address. How many people reside at this particular address. You'll go online. The census form is very short. If they're click boxes, it's very easy to complete. You'll complete your census. The website, as well as the telephone assistance, is going to be available. I believe they have 17 languages as of right now. So we're actually hoping that brings down that linguistic barrier, that if you need assistance or need to view it in another language, you have that ability. The telephone line is there for assistance. It's also there to complete. If you don't feel comfortable going online or you're having any issues, you can speak with someone and actually complete your census form. And the mail option is that if you do not respond by April 8th, they will automatically mail you a traditional questionnaire. But we are encouraging everyone to go online and or call, because it's a faster method, it's easy, you don't have to worry about filling it out, not remembering to put it back in the mail. So we are really encouraging everyone to fill it out online or to call the 1-800 number.
And so Nancy, if I can add to that, one of the things that we're trying to do or are in the process of preparing for as a complete count committee is we are preparing our libraries, our community centers, even some of our key employers, so that people who don't have access any other way will be able to access the internet through some of these sources. We're even putting kiosks in key locations, particularly those areas that are hard to count or have been historically hard to count. We're putting kiosks in those areas because one of the things we realized is that to go online, you have to know how to use a computer or be savvy enough on your smartphone to make it work. The kiosks that we're putting in place are very simple, touch, click, type in your geocode, and it'll be very simple to use. So those are some of the other things that we're doing to make it less intimidating.
I think you said 17 different languages.
Yes.
Jackie, can you talk about the value of that, especially when you talk about places like Osceola County? I mean, that being available in Spanish is integral.
Yes, and I think it's really key because even though a lot of Latinos are bilingual, they feel more comfortable in their native language. So therefore, when they're going to start asking those really challenging questions of making sure that every single person is counting, we want to make sure that they understand exactly what they're answering. And so with that Lair Educational Fund, we have a hotline, a bilingual hotline, and folks are able to call, and we're basically able to get them ready for the census. And we're pretty excited about it because it's very easy. The way that 2020 in the past, it was a little bit more challenging. And one of the things that we're determined is that we're not allowing distractions, if you know what I mean, to stop us. And the community is really focused, and we also focus a lot on elected officials to bring that message out, to let them know that we have the Hágase Con That hotline to be able to get folks to either, as we mentioned, either by mail, either just be able to go online on your phone. And there's 3 generations, right? You have grandma, of college students. And so we really want to be able to make sure, even though it's just one person, that we want to count everyone, but then a young person's able to take the lead with their phone, right? And so we're able to really focus on the fact and spread the word that they can do it in their native language.
I really want to dive in and give some time to these hard to count populations, because I think we're all probably sitting here going, what's the big deal? Why not just fill it out, get counted, move on, right? But it isn't that simple for a lot of communities and a lot of groups. So I want each of you, if you can, to respond to that. And we can start with you, Lavon. The hard to count populations, who are they? Where are they?
Yeah, what we have found is that there are pockets throughout Orange County where we have large populations that do not get counted, but in the percentage that we would want to have them counted. So there's geographical areas where there's undercounts, but then when you drill down and you look at the demographics of those geographical areas, then we understand what is happening. For instance, a lot of our low-income areas where people don't always have time for extra things like filling out census forms and that, because they're working 2 and 3 jobs, trying to keep kids in school, etc. We also know that our minority populations, particularly our Hispanic Latino populations, are very, very undercounted. Our senior population, we are very concerned, particularly here in Orange County, that our seniors are counted. And we can talk a little bit more about why that particular is so important. And then finally, our children, particularly children under 5. They don't always get counted. People don't think of them, well, they're not an adult, so I don't
Do they forget they have a kid?
Well, it's not that they forget, they just don't
I
think
forget
they need to count.
kids.
They don't think that they need to count. And so that's part of the education that we're doing, is explaining why these particular demographics are so important to us as a community. We're hoping that these hard to count or hard to enumerate areas and hard to count populations are really our targets for this census, and that we're able to increase participation in those areas.
What about seniors? Why particularly seniors is it so challenging?
Well, I think part of the challenge that we're going to have this time, I think, is mostly because of the digital divide that sometimes exists between our youngsters and our seniors. We don't know to the extent that our seniors will be involved in participating in the census online, but we're trying to accommodate for that. The other reason why our seniors sometimes aren't counted is because people, if they're living in a household, people think, oh, well, they're not working or they're not the head of the household, so they don't think that they need to be on the survey. But they too, just like children, need to be on the survey because there are services and resources that are provided that are dependent upon those numbers in order for us to provide services. Like, for instance, something as simple as elder services, Meals on Wheels, homebound services, our health care services, all of those services receive funding based on formulas. And those formulas are tied to census data. So if our number of seniors in our community is undercounted, it makes it much more difficult for our service providers, our health providers, to really have the funds that they need to serve our community.
That's a really great area where I think we can all help, especially I have found through my own coverage of the census over the years, seniors who live alone.
Yeah.
Will often just not pay attention or overlook it, and that's a great way that we can participate, is reaching out if we know a senior who lives alone or is just not really as active as they used to be. I mean, that's a great way to reach out and just make sure that they know about this and make sure it's coming. Jackie, if you can take the question about these hard to count populations, what you have found are the challenges.
Yes, I think it's a matter of really educating folks, because it's not even just with Latinos. As you can imagine, just for the sake of some numbers, in Miami-Dade, there's about 18,000, estimated 18,000 children, Latino children that we're not counting. So if you do the math, as a community, especially in South Florida, and for that matter in Orange County, our numbers are pretty high too, of our areas that are hard to count. it affects each and every one of us in this room because of the fact that just one person, every single person that is not counted, that's $2,000 that is not coming to your community. So one person, $2,000 per year, multiply that times a decade. We're only going to get one shot at this. So once you do the math and you say $2,000 times 10, $20,000 per person. Think about that. $20,000 per person that this community will not get when someone is not counted. So in other words, it's all our problems. We all need to play a role in this because it's going to affect our quality of life. And so we have to spread the word so that folks can realize how critical it is for them to be able to do it. And so when we're able to share with our seniors and our moms and folks that are just so busy, we have made sure that we're in the Spanish-speaking media, Telemundo, Univision, La Prensa. I practically live, especially now, from here all the way until April 1st, just to let them know how easy it is and how important it is. It's like, it's those lunches. It is the streets, and we're growing so much here in Orange County. It affects our infrastructure. It affects monies that come. So I always tell folks, the dollars that come to the federal government is not based on need. It is not based on the need. It's based on the data that they get regarding the census. So no matter how much we have a need here in Orange County, it's not going to matter. If we say that there's 300,000 folks from Puerto Rico that came to Central Florida, they're going to say, well, did you count them? Because if not, they don't exist. So every single person in this room has to make it personal, because every person that is not counted, there's going to be a huge impact. And it's going to affect the quality of life of each one of us in this room.
Channa, if you could take that, what you have found in terms of those hard to reach populations and the barriers for them.
Just as Jackie said, our saying is that the dollars follow the numbers. They don't follow the need. So we need the numbers in order to get the dollars. Hard to count areas, as defined by the Census Bureau, are areas that traditionally do not respond to the census. The statistics show that these areas are areas that have either high concentration of renters, low educational attainment, high crime, areas where English is not the primary language spoken in the home, areas as well that have a lot of small children. So what we do when we look at it is we look at it holistically. Why is it these populations are not responding to the census? And we think it boils down to two areas that we focus very heavily on: education and trust. Those are the two reasons we find that these areas typically are not participating. They either don't understand the importance or they don't trust being able to respond. And so our two-pronged approach is really that first, we make complete count committees, which are groups of trusted voices that are brought together to determine, how do I want to get this message out in my community? How do I get this message in a way that this particular demographic is going to understand? So that's the function of a complete count committee. We form them, they're formed in the state, the county, the city, even within a community. If a community groups that service the same population come together and say, we want to be our own complete count committee, we work with them to educate them so that way they understand and communicate that. Which brings me back to trust. Trust is something that's vitally important in what we call these hard to count areas. And trust doesn't happen. They brought me back a year ago. I can't establish trust in a year. It doesn't work that way. So if I walk into the Hispanic community and I say, as much as I know about the census and can educate them, they don't know me, nor do they trust me. But when I team up with a trusted voice like Jackie, or if I team up with Lavon in that particular community, they're known quantities. People already trust them. So when the information comes from a place of trust, it's received differently, so people are listening. So a lot of our job here in partnership is establishing relationships with these trusted partners, because we want to make sure they're educated and informed so they can share it with their community members, because that's how the information is going to be received.
That's great. We've already done that a little bit, but I had asked each of you to sort of bring an actual tangible example of instances where this worked or where it didn't work. For example, this thing about Dade County and 18,000 kids not being counted. That's dramatic. I would love for all of us to leave here today with this did you know fact that you can share with your neighbors and your friends and people on social media. Anything about the census that maybe we didn't know in terms of how it's worked or not worked in the past. So if each of you can talk to us about that.
Sure. One of the most prominent examples that comes to mind right now is for our Head Start program, which services children between the ages of 3 to 5. They do have an early preschool, but for the most part, they focus on children ages 3 to 5. Well, based on the count is how they are funded. Well, what we are finding is that we will plan for classrooms based on the counts that the census provides and the federal government funds, only to open up doors and realize that there may be 2 times, sometimes 3 times as many kids in need than there are classrooms that we actually have. That is one of the areas that I know that we've had a major impact in. In addition, when I talked about our elder services, for our congregate meals where we can go to, seniors can go to a specific location to have a hot meal, we have the same challenge where those programs are based on the census data. And so we assume that we're going to serve 100, and then the doors open and there's, 150 to 200 people looking to utilize the service. So those are some practical examples of how we've already seen from 2010 to now that we've been impacted.
Can you take some examples?
Yes, in my world are elected officials. I represent the National Association of Latinos elected and appointed officials. So our membership are congressmen, mayors, commissioners, were Republicans and Democrats and independents. And so one of the things that we learned from 10 years ago, and 10 years ago I was with my lib, and it was the fact that probably we didn't even start as early as we should. And we're talking about starting 2.5 years earlier. And so when we learned that, there was a lot of new elected officials. They want to make a difference in the community. However, if we did not give that professional training that they needed to be able to understand what the census meant to their community, we were able to share with folks that the census is not a partisan issue. Shame on any elected official that makes it partisan. This is not a partisan issue. This is about the quality of life of every single United States citizen. This is mind-boggling to me when we started talking, going from community to community. This is 2 years ago, and right away, if you do the math regarding the 2000, and since you are a community that's very fiscal responsible, then that means you probably don't have to raise taxes then. And all of a sudden, it's like they wanted to pay attention. Wait, repeat that. Repeat that again. I said, well, yes, if millions of dollars will come to your community, then that means you're going to have to get those dollars somewhere. So what we learned is to make sure that we started early, and that's how come I was sharing with you folks that when we started our first roundtables in South Florida and worked our way up to all the way to Davao, we started them in January of 2018, and back then everybody goes, what are you doing discussing the census in January of 2018? And I can't believe it. Here we are, January of 2020. It is here, and one of the things that we were able to see was that every single new elected official that would come into the community, we would share with them the importance. And guess what they did? They started complete count committees. So that was a lesson that was wonderful because we were able to have champions. In Orange County, we would make sure that we sat with each commissioner to explain to them the importance. In Osceola, we did the same Miami-Dade and Broward. So in other words, we have to start with those that represent us, the elected officials. That's why they get paid the big bucks, right? To make sure that they protect us. So that means the federal government is not doing any favors. That's dollars that belong to us. If not, then we will see the effects. And we only get one shot at this. We cannot mess this up. We only get one shot. So that's all the things that we learned.
Channa, if you can take that as well, just a tangible example of how it's worked or not worked in the past that could teach us a lesson for now.
I think you can see when it works, people don't realize what it is at work. when they don't know it's the census, but when you talk about a community and people say, well, my hospital has, I love those billboards that say the ER wait time is 3 minutes, right? We're all like, why did, some people in different areas are like, well, why is my ER wait time an hour and a half? If I drive over there, it's 3 minutes. You can actually take hard to count maps and overlay it, and you'll start to understand why your hospital wait time is an hour and a half, because I have a pocket that never got counted. When you say to me, well, my school's overcrowded, and they have a great brand new facility that just got built, why is my kid in an overcrowded school? Well, I'm pretty sure that if I look at your county, your area, there's a hard to count pocket, because we didn't know those kids would need and be attending school and need a new facility. When you talk about roads and highways, why do we have potholes in this community just got repaved? We didn't know enough people would be driving on it to allocate funds. All of these are everyday Head Start weights, small business loans. That's another area people don't think about. Disabled veterans, adoption assistance, school lunches, Pell Grants. I mean, the list goes on and on. Medicare, Medicaid. All of these are programs that when you say, why is it that as being a resident of this particular, people look to the county. It's not the county. These are pockets of hard to count areas that weren't allocated when it came to federal funding. These federal programs look to see, I want to send my dollars where I need to make an impact, where an impact can be made. If we don't know the population is there, the impact can't be made, the dollars won't be allocated. So you see the real life examples. North Miami, in 2010, I worked in South Florida, and North Miami is a smaller city that's there, and they are majority Haitian. Right after the earthquake, very similar to how you were talking about Puerto Rico, we had an influx of Haitian Americans there. They actually ended up with their first Haitian elected mayor. They are now a thriving community. Small businesses have flocked to that community because now they see the value. He made it a concentrated effort to ensure his community was counted, and you can visibly see the difference in the community, the amount of businesses that have come there, the new hospital that's there, the schools that are coming up there. It's a very significant impact, and that only happens when you get people to respond to the census. So it happens around you. It's just that people don't attribute it to the census. They go to the county and say, well, you didn't do this. Well, they only had so many dollars to begin with. So it has to be that you get your entire value for, and your people are counted and you're getting the dollars.
That's great. We touched on it a little bit, but do employers actually rely on census information in relation to hiring practices? Is that really a thing?
Employers do, small businesses do. I mean, if you think about it, I want to open a business where I know my demographic is. If I don't know my demographic is in your community, I'm not opening a business there. So it directly impacts businesses, it impacts hiring, it impacts employment. These are the implications that people don't realize. In certain communities, they are given certain amounts of dollars for grants to attract new businesses. That is also impacted by census dollars. It's all intertwined. We just don't realize that it's actually the census that's driving a lot of these decisions.
Lavon, you're shaking your head.
Yes, because I do economic development, or have done economic development, and I can't tell you how many market studies we've had to produce for businesses to make the case for neighborhoods or make the case for communities to say, hey, we do have a demographic that's going to use your services. Because and we have to sometimes go beyond the census data to try to show them that, because the census data, which is what they normally use, along with a few other data sources, but mostly the census data, it may not tell the full story of what's in the community. And so when you wonder, why don't I have a Starbucks, or why do I have a Starbucks, or why don't I have this grocery store or that grocery store, a lot of that has to do with the demographics and the data that's available. I know several neighborhoods that I worked in where they wanted more family businesses, where you can go and get ice cream, or go sit and have pizza together, or something simple that some neighborhoods have that their neighborhoods don't have. And the reason why those services are not there, or those businesses are not there, is because it's showing that the demographics aren't there in the census. And these are usually areas where they were undercounted.
Jackie, before I get to you on that one, I wanted to share that, there's something that's always stuck with me in terms of this. As you probably know, Orlando has its first Hispanic police chief, right? Everyone's familiar with Orlando Lavon. And I interviewed him right after he was appointed chief. And I asked him what it means to be the first Hispanic chief, and he isn't about that. He's not about, I'm Hispanic, so here I am. That's not what he's about at all, and no one should be. But he did say that he hoped his appointment as chief would inspire companies in our region to look around the room and see the talent that may be there, that maybe they overlooked before, or maybe hadn't stood out to them before, because there is so much talent there. And that's sort of like a really feel-good, kind of inspired me. But something like the census is tangible data, right, Jackie?
Right. No, and it's key. And as you mentioned, we want to be able to get to a point where it doesn't matter the fact that you're a Latino, and I was really blessed coming from Brevard County. Mentioned that was home, and of course I'm biased, but we didn't have back then even a large Latino population. So I was so proud of that. They did not look at me because of my skin color, and that was huge because I didn't see myself as well. I'm here to represent Latinos. It's a full circle because now I am part of an organization that's of Latinos, right? But that's not what we are as Americans. We're just proud Americans, and I love that. And so one of the things that is pretty huge is when folks come to Central Florida, they're able to see when economic development, businesses come to a community that is going to have a very educated community with good schools, with good law enforcement. That's going to be key, and then be able to have a lot of culture. We found that in Brevard County when it came to Economic Development Commission, we were making sure that we put the King Center and we put the zoo and things that people think, oh, well, what's the big deal? Well, quality of life is really what it's all about. And so the census is very tangible. That's the data that we need in order to be able to make these decisions and to have that kind of workforce to come into our community because it's what they're looking for.
I have one last question to wrap up with each of you, but I also want to let you know there's going to be a mic in the back of the room where you can line up and ask questions. So members, please do that. We encourage you. Anything you thought of while we were having our conversation, please be sure to line up in the back of the room so we can take your questions. And while you guys line up, I'll close with this question to each of you. What can we do? So give us an action plan here, all of us in the room. I can't wait to get on social media later and share what I learned here today and encourage my followers on my Channel 9 page. There's another plug. Follow me at the Channel 9 page. But, just encourage my followers on Channel 9 to learn more about this and to wake up and realize this is happening and it matters. So if you could each, and we'll start with you, just each give us an action plan. Tell us what we can all do to help.
So let's talk about what you can do as an individual, and then we'll talk about what you can do as a group. As an individual, I encourage you to make sure that your circle of friends, your families, are well educated. I joke about this, but it's really true. I have a devotional every morning with a group of ladies, and the census usually comes up somewhere in there. You just have to be deliberate about making sure that people know, whether that's through your social media or through conversations or even inviting someone to do a presentation at your house of faith. Those kinds of things are useful for you to do as an individual. But as a group, what you can do, for instance, these flyers that are on your table, we have lots of them. So we can give you these flyers to share with your members and to share in other organizations that you work with. And then lastly, you can also plan events and invite us to come. And we have a whole range of people who are going to be trained, thanks to Maleo, who are going to be trained, who are going to be experienced at talking about census. So have events, be involved. We'll be glad to have you.
Jackie, you want to go ahead?
Yes, that each person has their sphere of influence, and so it's very powerful. And with social media now, spread the word, and it starts with you. So if you when you start filling out your mailer, or if you're about to go online, spread the word, right? Go ahead and take a selfie, share it with folks. We're in the social media world. And I think that it spreads, and then ask your friends to spread. But if they see you doing it, you have to lead by example. So if it's important to each and every one of you here, then it becomes important to our sphere of influence. And that would be my message.
Channa, I love this idea of a census party. I didn't even think about that, but you can throw a party, spread the word, right?
We encourage everyone to throw some form of a census. So personally, again, your personal sphere of influence, right? Number one, we always say, take one personal step towards getting the message out. Whether it's posting it on your social media, whether it's at Thanksgiving dinner, hey, do you guys know the census is coming, right? Look around you to your personal sphere and say, you talk about the census. Secondly, we like to say, look outwards, right? A social organization that you're a part of, your workplace, are they participating in getting the census message out? And then thirdly, your community. Be a part of an organization such as this one and find out what are we doing as an organization to get this message out and how can I help? Those are the three ways that you can actually take action steps. A personal action step, something in your sphere of influence, whether it's a community group or a workplace, and then joining an organization that is getting that message out.
Okay, let's open the floor. We want to get you guys all back to work and back to where you need to be. And we do have a line back there, which is great to see. So we'll begin with questions from our members.